Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the message. Now, first let me give a shout out to S. Jock for coming through on not only CashApp, but also coming through with the links to the news. And I've learned some important things about the black world. And I'm not saying about FBA or just about Caribbeans or Continentals, but about the black world from him. And I get updates which do help us out. Um, one update is that the Malian army has uncovered a plot to overthrow the government, and they made about 55 arrests. Even though the current government came into power through two of the same types of plot, these coups itself, in 21 and 22, 2021 and 2022. Nonetheless, they made 55 arrests, and this is the cycle of governments. Governments that are not changed via the administration are changed systemically through overthrows or from corruption within, usually a combination of both. And when the new governments come about, they do not tolerate anybody trying to overthrow them, even though they had to overthrow another one. So whether it's just an administration with the same system that overthrows the previous one, or a completely different system that overthrows a previous system, and not just the administrations, nonetheless, they all have the same idea. They do not tolerate the same thing that they did in order to get into power. This has worked for and against citizens, but keep that in mind. And this is why it is that there has to be a sort of morality in government. There must be. In order for a government to have a moral right to overthrow a previous government and then turn around and say no one's going to overthrow us, at least not with a systemic change, even if it's an administration change, meaning replacing office holders with other office holders. They have to have a moral right to do it, so they got to be morally superior to anything that came before it and to what could possibly come after it. This is why we don't apologize for the government system that we have in place. You know who I'm talking about when I say we. Those who know. In other black news, Angola 10 days ago gave a 24-hour notice to all Chinese nationals in Angola to leave. I don't know if that was carried out by the 4th or not. I know that the order was given. I do not know what happened since then. I'm waiting on any updates. If any of you have updates, please put them in the comment section. In other black news, Ibrahim Traore is getting rabbits in order to aerate the soil that has become desert in Burkina Faso recently. To recover arable land that had been dried out. It could have been done with mechanized means, but for a tenth of the cost, rabbits could have been imported, and they were, and they're to be let loose in these areas for this purpose because they'll naturally do their own digging, oxygenate the soil, allow rainwater to seep in these tunnels, and then make the land arable again for farmers to go in and replant. I am glad that nobody has done anything to get rid of Traore. Well, I'm glad that nobody succeeded. They've tried, but I'm glad no one has succeeded. Um, if you are one of those that wants to maintain respect and dignity for FBA, then no one in their right mind would blame you. But if you're one of those that wants to say that we will have nothing to do with other black folks of other nationalities, understand that one of the most vehement callers to this, Dennis Sperling, even said, and we don't agree, he and I don't, but even he said that in a few years, maybe 15 years after non-American black folk that don't respect us have learned their lesson, we can go back to what we were before. So even he does not have this permanent grudge goal, although I don't think that his idea of 15 years from now was reconciling is going to come to fruition if people listen to him today. Because simply put, as we know, black folks of all nationalities lack the nuance to do something like that. They just lack it. Um, anyway, going further in news of the black world, Jimmy Barbecue Cherezier in Haiti is now wanted by the U.S. for $55 million. And 55 million. So at this point, I suspect that somebody's going to turn him in. And he recorded a message in English exonerating a named accomplice of his named Fredo, saying that this man never took up a collection and sent anything to him. That was strange to me because what happened was that Jimmy Barbecue Cherezier pretty much said nothing in his own defense in a clip that I saw, but exonerated someone else. Um, and then in news that is general and not race specific, Vantage quoted a study, but they did not explain the parameters of the study that was or survey that was carried out. So I do not know the sample size or the details of the survey, but the finding was that 80% of the Generation Z respondents in the survey said that they would rather marry an AI bot. That's a problem. That's an issue. They would rather marry an AI bot. If the sample size was only 10 people and 8 of them said, yeah, I'd rather marry an AI bot, that's still alarming. I don't think that it was the men only saying this because the women have gotten so bad and out of hand. And I don't think that it was only the women saying this because the men are just so bad and icky to them. I suspect that that was probably both because the women are hard to please. And um, I'm not going to sit up here and say that the men are the ones pushing the women away. Men don't have to do much to push women away anyway. But here's the thing, this was not covered for a Western audience. It was covered for an English speaking, maybe westernized audience in India. That's very telling because many of us don't know that tradition in India is one way, but the legal environment is different even from its own tradition. So they're going through something very similar. And as a matter of fact, many U.S. states have rules that the breadwinner is the one that pays alimony in the event of a divorce, notwithstanding any previous ironclad agreements to the contrary. But by the same token, you see, here's what's kicker about it. In India, it's the husband that pays alimony. It's not the breadwinner, it's the husband. This changes if he dies, she dies, or she remarries. Well, these women will pressure men to marry them. Then they'll leave for the divorce, get the alimony, and then won't marry the guys that they want to just dig them out. So the guys they really want to screw are doing it for free. No commitment, nothing. I mean, the women may want to be taken seriously, but no commitment. None of that. So, and that's only because they're already getting alimony from the guys they don't like. So why remarry when they're already getting dug out by a guy that doesn't have to make as much money, and they're being paid by the guy that did make the money. That's India for you. That's its legal environment of marriage. Feminism has been a problem in India from the 70s, and many don't know this. Indian men are some of the worst treated by their own women, abroad and at home. They got it bad. It's bad with them. Even in Trinidad, an Indo-Trinidadian wife who was a prison guard was banging out some of the male guards there, two at a time. It was on camera. Her husband he video recorded himself pouring petrol on himself and lighting himself aflame. By the time his father could put the fire out, it was too late. He'd burned too badly and he couldn't survive. I talked about this some years before. This is a problem. We are very harshly treated, and they are very harshly treated. Yet and still, we're not going to be allies in this, largely because of their attitudes against our race. But that's no sweat off of my back. Nonetheless, these bits of news, they start to fit together when you analyze them in different places and in a context. This is what we should keep track of, and this is why I thank S. Jock. For the FBA to become isolationist won't help. Distinction is necessary, but isolation is also divisive. It's not affordable, and it's divisive. And so it behooves black folks of various nationalities to pay attention to what is going on, even in each other's jurisdiction, so to speak, while still maintaining distinctions. And I want to point something out that is a valid complaint of FBA's against our detractors, not against everyone else in the race, but against specifically our detractors. Nigerians now have a bad reputation because of what a particular group amongst them have done everywhere they've gone. They have a bad reputation in Malaysia, in Indonesia, Bangkok. I'm not going to say all of Thailand, but certainly Bangkok, because we know that the Bangkok police, they're aware of the distinctions. Zimbabwe, South Africa, Kenya, and I forgot which other nations, well, Ghana, yeah, on the continent, Rwanda, have gotten tired of Nigerians, and the populaces are beginning to call for them to go home, go back to Nigeria and stay there. I don't agree with these particular calls on the basis of the passport by itself, because I understand some of these differences between different cultural groups within Nigeria. However, I also realize that many other people don't know this. To be fair, FBAs do have a valid complaint in this, and I'm going to side with FBAs because the complaint is valid. But it is, my answer is not to the nationalities, it is to the detractors specifically. It is specifically to the ones who sit up and say that Zimbabwe has a right to expel and South Africa has a right to expel even when the government doesn't do it, and that all these nations have a right to expel Nigerians, and then turn around and say that FBA don't have a right to even so much as tell them stay over there because you're going to try to do harm to us. That part is not correct. The Zimbabwean is not required to love who they can identify, even if it's not exact enough. They still are not required to love who they can identify as causing trouble and spreading mischief in their own land. By the same token, the difference is that the Zimbabwean is not jumping on the Zambian or the Jamaican or the South African. The Ghanaian is not required to love who they can identify as spreading mischief in their land. Now, to be fair, they're also not grabbing up everybody else, mistaking them for whom they've identified. They're not being told that they have to welcome the most unwelcoming of their cousins with open arms. No one is saying this to them. No one is saying this to the Zimbabwean. No one is saying this to the Rwandan or to the Kenyan. And therefore, it is not okay for these detractors to turn around and tell FBA that we have to be welcoming with open arms, even of people that are our detractors and that disrespect us. That part is not okay. We should not be divisive on the basis of nationality. I just got through saying that. But by the same token, we don't have to be able to identify a particular cultural group that really thinks it's okay to just do everybody else wrong, and then we have to turn around and embrace them, even if we are closely related to them. We don't have to embrace them when they turn around and then use derogatory terms from another language they don't even speak to insult us so that we don't know any better. Oh yeah, Akata is a Yoruba word. It is not the Yoruba running around calling us Akata. That's the funny thing about it. And when we identify who the hell it is, we don't have to sit up here and accept them with open arms and listen to them tell us about how pure they are when they're not. That is not a requirement. And that's a legitimate gripe of the FBA, and I'm going to support that one 100%. If other people can identify a group that makes trouble and they can delineate who they are accurately, they have every right to kick them out. And it is the same thing with us. Even though we don't have the government, even though we don't control deportations, and I don't want us going around and trying to help massa with deportations either, especially brothers within our race, because the common enemy is still the common enemy. We have every right to say to them, do not come around us and pass yourselves off as us either. Do not do that. Once you talk down to us for things we did not actually do, you are persona non grata. And if you do face racism, you will face it on your own and without our help. Because you said that we weren't facing racism when it was racism we were facing. Where we go wrong at times as FBA is that we might hear somebody with that one accent talk that noise and diss us, and then turn around and start reacting to everybody with an accent that's not one of our own. That's where we tend to go too far. But for those of us that don't, for those of us that really do delineate who troublemakers are from who are not, we are not required to be open-minded towards those that we can tell are troublemakers. That is not a necessity. It was decades ago that some Liberians sat up and told me that around a Nigerian, I better not show my credit cards or ID or anything on my date of birth or social security number on it, especially if they had those Nigerian names. What they meant were names from a particular language group. It was decades ago that they said this. They didn't say Africans. They didn't say Caribbeans. They didn't say none of that. They specified Nigerians with Nigerian names. That's how they said it. They didn't know what language to call it, but they specified that. And later on, some of them got my ex-wife's identity, bought all kinds of electronic stuff with her social security number and on her credit. Yeah, it was them. They got arrested for some other stuff later on. But she managed to get a phone number for whoever it was that was doing this, and she called that number herself. And when she called it, she knew exactly because my ex-wife was friends with many Yoruba that were Muslim, and she knew who was who by accent. She called and she identified them right off the bat. She tried to get their number and everything, their names and things like that, but they were slick, too slick. But she knew who they were and what their first language was. And to this day, she doesn't say anything against that particular nationality. And she doesn't even say anything bad about that particular language group. She only has something bad to say about specifically scammers, which is a behavior that is completely voluntary. She and I are not friends. We co parent our daughters. I don't hate her, but we co parent our daughters. But this is something for which I got to give her credit. Most FBA, especially Muslims, as I've said, are not walking around here looking for smoke. And most people from the continent ain't walking around here looking for smoke. And so if we all got to turn around and dogpile on this one particular group because of the proliferation of scammers and mischief makers from amongst them, no matter where they go, then so be it. Nothing unites like a common enemy anyway. And if this particular group is willing to go around the black world and be every other black person's common enemy, that is where you should focus your ire. Brother from Jamaica, brother from Barbados, Yoruba brother, Hausa brother, because y'all know them even better than we do. Brother from Mali, brother from Niger, our Ghanaian brother, our Zambian, our Zimbabwean, our fellow Kenyan or Rwandan cousin. If we're going to sit up here and if we just have to fight somebody from our own race instead of it being a free for all based on nationality, we know who the troublemakers are. And why not turn to that particular language group and tell them either you dogpile the scammers amongst you, or the rest of us will dogpile you collectively for hiding them. That would have made a hell of a lot more sense. And that's why I told you all to be critical of anybody that's just talking divisive, and only that. Not someone that disagrees, not someone that wants to know, well, look, I heard the stereotype. What's the truth behind it? I'll give you a chance to tell the truth about it because I really don't know. And I'm not trying to be judgmental and make any false accusations. I want to know what parts are true and which parts are not. I'll let you tell your side of the story. Not someone that comes along and says that, but someone that actually just repeats all the worst stereotypes. That's where you start to fight someone. That's where we start to fight someone, generally speaking. And that's okay to fight them. But you know who it is that just typically has the worst to say about everybody else. We already know who they are. We've been able to identify them. And it's not even a nationality per se. Remember, it's a language group within. If we're going to dogpile on someone, we already know who it is. So we can get our hands from around each other's throats and necks at this point. I hope that what I said helps and benefits. Thanks again, S. Jock. As always, black heart, black mind, black out, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual, non-select male power because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction of judgment day. Thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Air, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.